This video is on wax-ups and what a wax-up is and how do we use it during a case. First of all, a wax-up, it serves two purposes. It shows us where this case could potentially go before we actually do anything to the teeth. And then we can actually use the wax-up during the actual case to see how where our preps are coming along to match up with the final result. So let's take, for example, this photo right here. We have impression taken and stone models poured up with a patient showing their current condition. Now, we could just go in there and start prepping the teeth and then have the lab just kind of fix it, or we could do this ahead of time where we could send it to the lab and tell them, go ahead and treat this like a test run. It's almost like putting together a three-dimensional blueprint. They can take these stone models in their lab, they can kind of trim back some of the stone, kind of mimicking what our prep is going to be like on the actual teeth themselves. And then they layer back in wax to kind of build up the teeth, and the wax is going to simulate what the porcelain is going to look like. But what the purpose of the wax up, it shows us how the teeth in the person's current mouth position, like where the teeth are positioned, where the gums are positioned, how the bite comes together, that position, given all those positions, how can this be put back together? I might be able to look in my mind's eye and know where it's going to go, but it'd be a lot nicer to see it ahead of time. It's also nice for the patient to see where this is going to go, because in this example, it's quite extensive, the amount of work that's going to have to be done. And there's a lot of things that have to come together just right. The teeth have to fit next to one another just right. The bite has to be good. We need to know what the gum line is going to look like as well. So you can tell right here that this person was having both the upper and the lower teeth done, and they need to know how that was all going to fit and how it was going to look. And so in this case, they used white stone with white wax. In this other example over here, they used a yellow stone with a white wax. It doesn't matter what color the stone is or what color the wax is. That has nothing to do with the shade of the porcelain they will ultimately end up picking. This is just for us to get an idea of three-dimensionally how the whole thing is going to fit together. So another big case down here, upper and lower teeth, several of them, or it could just be a few teeth. It could just be the front four teeth, just like this. Kind of gives us an idea of what it could potentially look like. Another example showing what if someone was missing some teeth right here. If we're going to do a bridge, what would that look like? And so, we could put together, a plan on where these teeth are going to be. Is the space between here going to be so wide that the replacement tooth is going to look kind of odd? Does the patient need to go into some kind of orthodontics ahead of time to kind of move those teeth closer together? It's hard to tell by just looking at this, but if you have a wax up, now you can see what the proposed teeth are going to look like. And then, so that's great during the diagnostic phase to try to figure out what's possible so we can show the patients. But now let's imagine that we're actually in the case. How can a wax up help us? We can take the wax up, and again, in this case, they didn't use white wax. They just used some kind of yellowish wax with some yellow stone. Again, color doesn't matter. They used this green silicone. They made a putty-like mix. They folded it and pushed it against those teeth on that stone model, and they let it set. Then they took a knife and they were able to cut away a layer right here. And you can see that when they put this section on, it rests right up, against the teeth on the stone model. Okay, because we're going to take this clinically here in just a moment. And then they can also take the other side of that index that they just cut away, and they can actually put it up against the roof of the mouth and see right where the edges of these teeth and where they're going to line up. So now we know what the wax up what it's going to look like. And now we know what the silicone index that's been made against that wax up. We can now take that to the mouth, and here's actually in the patient's on the, you can see the teeth and the gums. This is the actual live patient. When they start reducing back the enamel, the dentist needs to know, well, how much enamel do I need to remove? Because some teeth can be this way and that way. They can be tipped forward and back. They can be canted. You can have a tooth that's a little bit too skinny or one that's a little bit too wide. And so you need to know if they're going to be reducing enough enamel so that when the final porcelain is put on there, the porcelain is going to be thick enough throughout each restoration. So here we can see that there's enough clearance there's a gap between the prepped tooth and the actual silicone index taken of the wax up. So now we can see that this was hugging right tight right along there. Now they've reduced some of the enamel, and now there's a gap. That gap is going to be filled in by the porcelain. So chair side, the dentist will look right down that gap and see, is there a big enough gap? Is there going to be enough porcelain there to accomplish what they want to accomplish? And here you can see this tooth is just kind of out of position slightly, and there's going to be a lot of porcelain right here. but very little porcelain right there. So this is very helpful. This would tell the dentist, don't cut anymore right here, but you might need to cut a little bit more right there. So you can see how this would be important chairside when we're actually doing the work. And then right here, you can see, well, are the teeth short enough? Because if you don't shorten them enough, again, the porcelain get real thin, and porcelain's like glass. It's great unless it gets really thin, then it becomes brittle and it will break pretty easily. And so this tells us how the final porcelain is going to play out when it's laid on top of the teeth. And so now we can see the gap between the edge of where it's going to wind up and where the prep is actually currently. And the dentist may say this looks good, or they may say, yeah, I need to reduce a little bit more. And so having this silicone index helps. And again, the silicone index was taken from the wax up, which kind of showed us where this case was going to go. So that is what we use wax ups for. It's one to show us ahead of time before we even do any work on the teeth, what it's going to look like. And then we actually move forward with the case. It shows us if our preps are accurate. Okay, great. Thanks.